Everybody, welcome to One More Round with Josh Norris. Today, I'm very excited. I have a new friend of mine, Nathan Kohlerman. We just met one time, but I feel like now we know each other quite well after spending some time before the podcast. So, got a lot to talk about here. Nathan is a former veteran, so 5.5 years in the military. He takes men on retreats, help them work their spirituality, get to know themselves, and so much more. We're going to talk about all that. But if you get some good stuff off of this show today, please share it out with a friend. You're probably going to see clips of this running on social media. Share that out with somebody who can get something value of it. So I'm excited to have you here, Nathan.
Yeah, man, it's such an honor, man. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So, I guess we can get started with, I was reading in your bio, when you were younger, you got into some bad stuff, right? What was that all about? And then tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
Yeah, man. So growing up, I grew up in a very chaotic household. I mean, I didn't really fully know what love was, if I'm being honest. I mean, love either felt very painful and maybe even abusive at times, and very also controlling, right? It felt very controlling and restrictive, like this is what love is, this is what love has to be. And for a long time going through that abuse, right? Physically, mentally, emotionally, it took a toll. And when my parents finally separated around high school, that's when I started lashing out a lot. And I started getting in fights. I mean, being a mixed martial artist since the age of 5, I was well equipped to do damage, and I had a lot of unresolved and undigested emotions for a really long time without an ability to manage them or channel them into a healthy environment, right? So when they separated, I went off the wall, and I found gangs, right? Because gangs were, family, considered to be family, and I could fight, and they saw a use for me. They saw value. And at that point, I was willing to do anything to be accepted.
Yeah.
Right. Being bullied and picked on and being the smallest kid, hitting a growth spurt. And now I'm bigger, leaner, faster, stronger, and pumped full of rage.
Yeah.
So I was an enforcer for a while. And that's when I got mixed up in drugs. Started, of course, with like marijuana, alcohol, got into cocaine, and then ecstasy. I started selling ecstasy for a really long time, flipping a lot of pills and making a lot of money at a really young age, and of course hiding it from my mom really well.
Yeah.
And even when she found it, I'd break into her safe and pull it out and reinvest again. And at that point, I was in a really dark place. I was feeling a lot of pain, and I didn't want to feel it anymore, and that ultimately led to me getting addicted to heroin, at about 16 years old.
Wow.
And that became my life. Man, everything that I did on a day-to-day basis was, where can I get my next fix? Do I have enough tinfoil? Do I have enough straws? Like, my whole reality started forming around feeling this way because I didn't want to feel what was really happening on the inside.
Wow.
So fast forward maybe a year into my addiction, really, really deep, really, really dark. And of course, hanging around the wrong people. And I thought one day it'd be a great idea to get some product without having to pay, which involved the use of a gun and a robbery. And we ended up knocking on this dealer's door, basically breaking in, like we were gonna buy it, right? So we had like more of a coercive break-in is what I would call it back in the day. And so we'd go in, we'd act like in a buy, just swiped it, ended up holding them at gunpoint, everything else, booked it to the truck, about to pull out, homie's driving away, and then next thing I know, the back window gets shot out from behind us, and the bullet hole is in the dashboard. And in that moment, I didn't realize it in the moment because I was just so pumped with adrenaline, but when I really sat down that night, I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I could have died. And I reached out to my sister, asked her for some help. It's like, hey, do you know where I can get some methadone somewhere, at a clinic, anywhere. I just need to get clean. I need to change. And she told my mom. And I remember this being a really big distinctive moment in my life back in 2009, right? Around Christmas time. And she sat me down and they told me that, if I kept going down the path that I was on, I was going to be dead or in prison. So I took that to heart coming from my mom. And the next week when I showed up, there were Army recruiters on the doorstep. And I went to a really small charter school, so there was maybe 30 people in our graduating class.
Okay.
It's called Assholes Last Chance, Accelerated Learning Center, actually, here in Phoenix. And I saw the opportunity, so I talked to him, and I was honest, and it's like, I'm not in a good place. I need something. I need to change. And fast forward, I signed my papers when I was 17, committed to fully finishing high school because I had to make up about a full year within that year, on top of the curriculum already, so 2 years of school within one. Mm-hmm. And I ended up finishing, turned 18, left for basic training the month after that.
Wow, that's insane. So I'm just kind of processing all this. I mean, growing up in that environment, getting into drugs and all that, and I'm almost thinking if you hadn't have sat down and contemplated that bullet going to the dashboard and really thought about that, you might not have made that distinction that you needed help and that you were going to, but then you took action on that. You got the help that you needed, and now you're going into the military. Like, that's insane. So what were your aspirations going into the military?
Dude, I just wanted to get clean.
Yeah.
Like, I just wanted a better life. And, what really appealed to me was that I would get college paid for. I mean, I was a potential student, meaning I could literally show up, ace a test, mm-hmm. and I was naturally just very intellectually advantaged, I'll say.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to show up, I didn't want to do the homework, I didn't want to do what teachers told me, and for some reason I thought college would be different. So that was really like a motivating factor. And once I got in, I realized quite quickly it wasn't about any of that. And I just wanted to be healthy. Like, I wanted to know what healthy felt like, what being a mature and healthy adult would be like, because I didn't have that, mm-hmm. right? I didn't have emotionally mature parents. I didn't have any sense of stability, right, growing up. And I needed something to feel safe. I needed something to feel secure, not just in myself, but just in my environment. I needed some type of control, right?
So what was it like when you went into boot camp and started getting into that realm?
Man,
Being told what to do.
Yeah, it did not go well.
Tell you don't enjoy.
It did not go well, man. 7 weeks in, I got demoted for disrespecting the senior non-commissioned officer. Because I was like, what? What do you want? Like, anybody who's considered in the military, don't throw your hands up at a drill sergeant. That's definitely a no-go. And I didn't learn that lesson, of course. Fast forward through the training, I get shipped off to Korea, my first duty station. I'm out for my 19th birthday. Got really drunk, really drunk, really fucked up. And although there was good intent involved with the situation, I definitely took it into my own hands and used excessive force, because there were two NCOs who were wanting to, non-commissioned officers, who were trying to pull a girl out of a bar. And I misperceived, I guess, what was going on. Mm-hmm. And I thought that it would be a great opportunity for me to intervene and be the knight in shining armor for this woman. And I ended up putting both those guys in the hospital myself. And one guy had to get his jaw rewired shut. It was not a good situation. That guy could have potentially been killed. And I got in a lot of trouble for that. Almost got court-martialed and sent to military prison. And that's the last time I've ever gotten in a street fight. Because that was the time where it's like, wow, fighting and hurting people has actual repercussions to it. Because all those years of fighting back in the day, and I can't tell you how many street fights and, gang-related activities and jumping people and robbing people that I did, that I got away with it. I really thought that I would get away with everything. Like, there were zero repercussions for aggressive actions.
Wow, so that's another point in your life, you realize that there's repercussions. And before, had you not really had that bad of an incident happen, I mean, you could have continued on that path. It sounded like you were still in a better place, and I can understand why, if you thought they were going to, rape this girl, for example, mm-hmm. that you wanted to step in and make sure that everything's okay. Because I think we talked a little bit about it. I know you've got a real extensive martial arts background, and I think I told you I studied for 5 years, and I got a black belt in Shaolin Kempo, and which is such a great art, and I loved it, and I got really good. but I was fortunate enough I never actually had to get in an actual street fight. I've been in shape for a long. Back then, I was in really, really good shape, and I would have hurt people absolutely. So I'm glad I never had to use it, and I wasn't smart enough to know that. Like I'm just looking back, because like even today, if somebody tries to fight me, I'm like, step away, because there's just no point in that. But
Right.
you go through that. You now avoid going and getting court-martialed, which is great. Are you dancing on eggshells with everybody for a little while, or what happens next?
Yeah. So what happened next is I went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and I saw it as a new start. And that's when I really started like showing up
Yeah.
the best that I could, and that was 2012. I got there, and it was just night and day difference. Of course, it's like I didn't want to be out in the Oklahoma heat, so I started like using these like coercive manipulation tactics and kind of getting what I want, and thought for some reason that human resources would be a great idea, which you cannot put me behind a desk. Like it's like trying to put an animal in a cage.
Yeah.
That fucking thing will go crazy, right? And I was going crazy, and I started feeling this aggression coming up, so I started putting that all into fitness.
Yeah.
And that's really where I found my love for fitness. And I started performing really, really well, got attention, and one day the brigade commander comes in, full bird colonel, he goes, "What are you doing behind a desk?" He's like, "Can you run?" It's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Are you strong?" I was like, "Obviously." He's like, "You think you can run with a flag?" I was like, "Absolutely." So he's like, "Cool." Walks out. Next week they pull me up to be his driver and gunner. So I kind of got expedited on the pathway a little bit, and that's where I really saw potential start to rise, because there was a sense of responsibility that came with that, right? If I'm going to be seen next to perceivably the most powerful person in the brigade, and people automatically associate me to this man, it's not just about me anymore. Now I'm putting his reputation at risk. So now I need to show up in a way that exemplifies that. And then I got just fast-tracked through the process. So even though I was demoted twice, I still made sergeant 2.5 years, just at the fastest rate you can.
Wow.
Because of that. And it really inspired that will to do better, that will to be great.
Yeah, like I'm hearing, it's almost like you learned what honor was all about when you were basically in subordination to another man that you respected and you honored, and you wanted to show up to make sure that you didn't stain his reputation and that you were nothing but a blessing to him. If I'm hearing that correctly. So it's like that's a new lesson that you're learning at this point in time.
Yeah, and I really admired just how people respected him, right? It was earned respect because of a commitment and because of a rank, right? A position, a level at which a lot of people might not be able to relate to, right? Because with that level of responsibility, it's like Spider-Man, right? With great power comes great responsibility. But for me, I recognize that with great responsibility comes great power. And that was a huge shift for me, because I'm saying that I don't need to seek power, right, which I did through aggression, anymore, and I can actually seek responsibility, and the power will follow. And that dynamic changed my life, just in that simple act, in that recognition.
That's a clip right there, just so we're clear. That was freaking awesome right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I don't want to. I love actually talking about your whole military career, but I know you've done tremendous things since. But when did you get out of the military? Like what happened there?
Yeah, I got medically discharged for compartment syndrome of both my legs. Pretty much an overuse injury. I mean, at that point, I was training twice a day. I was running in the morning. I was in charge of the overweight program. So I was taking those people to the gym selfishly so I can get my own workout. And yeah, I think I had mentioned it to you. I was really inspired to go for special forces. So I was really pushing my body to the limit. And you stack bodybuilding on top of that and competing on top of that, because I started competing in like men's physique back in like 2014 at that time. So like 2 years of competing and going into bodybuilding, I put my body through the ringer, man, in the military load, and just all these suppressed emotions that started manifesting as these symptoms in my body. I got out medically discharged at 100%. So I'm still technically 100% permanently and totally disabled. A lot of those things for mental health stuff, because things in the military happen and it creates certain conditions, right? We see it all the time with veterans and PTSD, and how big of a toll or great of a toll that can take on a human. So I get out, I'm already in fitness. I actually got trained and certified as a personal trainer before I got out.
Okay.
Because after my divorce, because I was married at 19, had my daughter, got divorced, and I couldn't afford child support. So I started personal training on the side. So I'd train clients at 4 a.m., 5 a.m., go to the unit at 6 a.m., work all day until about 5 or 6 p.m., and then train again at 7 and 8 p.m. So I was going 4 a.m. to 9 p.m. for quite some time.
Wow.
Throughout my whole medical discharge process and everything else. And I immediately left the military and I started working at Lifetime as a personal trainer. And of course, like being a former drug dealer and being a big rip dude, that was easy for me.
Yeah.
Like I could train people, I can kick their ass, I can smoke them, and I can sell ice to an Eskimo.
Yeah.
What better profession than to go into personal training where I can still also pursue bodybuilding? I'm in the environment all the time, and now I can build this reputation. And I got really deep into it to the point where I was doing so many steroids when I got out, right? Just, Test, Tren, Masteron, Anavar, Winstrol, growth hormone,
D-ball?
all kinds of shit.
Yeah.
No, I didn't even need D-ball, man. I was on so much that, I was D-ball.
Yeah.
I was D-ball. 253 pounds at my biggest.
Yeah, you ever see that clip with Ronnie Coleman? It's like, what do you want for Christmas? Just to use those little Winnie, little Debo. It reminded me of it. But so you're pumping you're basically now putting your body in a whole new stressor, and you're in a career that you're freaking probably, I can just imagine you're thriving, because I could sense that you can sell, and obviously you know how to train people, but then you're taxing your body again. So yeah, what happened with that?
So yeah, man, like being 253 pounds, walking around, swole as shit, nobody's messing with me, nobody's getting near me again. That being the image, right, that I tried to uphold for so long, right? If I'm big and bad, then nobody really sees who I am, how I feel, and my demons on the inside, who live on the inside. I was just building all these layers, right, through muscle, which is really common in the fitness industry.
100%.
Most people who I knew in fitness industry had deeply, deeply suppressed things for a really long time, and fitness helped them through that. So it is a solution, and it's also a suppressant.
Right.
So when I recognized that was actually March 2017, 1 year after I got out, right? So I had 12 calendar months, and I leaned on a granite counter, it snapped off, and it gashed my whole hand open, where I tore 4 tendons, severed my radial artery, my median nerve. My hand was gone, dude. And I was stuck in a cast like this for 7 months.
Jeez, Pete.
And when that happened, it's like, holy shit. Like, bodybuilding's gone, fitness is gone. Who the fuck am I?
Your identity's stripped.
Done.
In this moment.
Done.
Yep.
Just complete act of God. And I knew it was an act of God or creator from that one test that was done in the hospital where they found that I had severe liver toxicity, where I could have died, and acute kidney injury where I was 24 years old, and they're like, we want to take your kidney out. And I'm like, what? And then telling me that I also have $250,000 in surgeries on my hand, and now I'm rated 25% disabled by the state of Arizona. So now technically I'm 125% disabled. What does that mean, right? I'm fucking broken.
Yeah.
That is the identity I chose. I chose that I'm broken. And I remember going through the rehab process. I started using medical marijuana. I really started trying to really just be okay with life, and not to mention that when this happened, I had my daughter with me visiting. And I remember the moment, her seeing me in the hospital and just like crying, and like it still like hurts to want to be this big, strong person, for my kids now.
Yep.
And to be seen in that moment of weakness and vulnerability, it crippled me even more.
Dude, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'll tell you a parallel story from me. So
Yeah.
About 5 years ago now, and I've owned my own company for 14, 15 years. So 5 years ago, we were going through a real tough time in our company, and some personal things were going on. So I got into fitness. That's what got me back into it. And then I got into it while I worked out every day. And I had done it for a month. I'm like, oh, maybe I can continue this on. Well, long story short, I used that because it was something that I could do and predict on a daily basis that I could take control of. I did that for 3 years, a little over 3 years, 3 years and 2 months, every day, never missed a day. And then I got heart failure. So, and it wasn't because of working out. I got a virus. And this was last year in April. It's actually coming up on a week from now. And I was taken to the hospital. And I couldn't breathe. I had been fighting it for 2 weeks. I couldn't breathe. My heart wasn't pumping like it was supposed to. It was retaining a bunch of water. And they thought I was going to die. My kids coming to visit me at the hospital and watching the look on their face and the concern that they had, it petrified me. Like, am I not going to be able to walk my daughter down the aisle? Am I not going to be able to see my sons, grow up and play sports and, do whatever they do? And I just remember thinking, man, this is terrible. And I thought I was going to die. And this happened. This was a 3-month period of time. It continued on. I was in and out of the hospital, all that stuff. And, full story, now I've recovered. And I don't work out every day. I work out 5-6 days a week. Well, okay, 6 days a week. Okay.
Not enough.
Yeah. But there was this mental thing. But I remember losing my identity there because people around me, they knew. Like, I had worked out, for a long time every day. And they're like, man, how do you do this? People would hit me up, DM me, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, don't do it. It's stupid. But I couldn't stop because it was almost an addiction I had to create take me out of a certain need 5 years ago that now everything was thriving, but I didn't realize that I didn't need to do that anymore. And I didn't beat my body up. So heart failure actually ended up being a good thing. But going back to your daughter being there, I've experienced that with my kids, and it's heart-wrenching.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that with me, man.
Yeah, bud.
Yeah, I mean, it's, right? And maybe people who are listening, they might be able to relate to that in some degree. And man, that's just a moment where I felt completely powerless. Right? Like, completely powerless. And it's actually this very same thing that kept me going, right? And I remember, again, pretty distinctly, a few months after that, I want to say it was summer, sometime, May, June, July. And I remember like brushing my teeth with my left hand, right? Because this is my dominant hand. I had to learn everything with my left. And it was just like, yo, I'm 253 pounds. I can't barely scratch my back. And now you want me to brush my teeth? Like this like simple act that I had taken for granted for a really long time. Yeah. And I remember just like dropping it one day, and it just like set me off the edge. It was just like that one thing, right? It's like that one drop of coffee that just makes the whole cup overflow. And all my shit came up to where I was literally on the ground bawling, screaming, crying in a flurry of rage. And then I started having just these thoughts of suicide, these thoughts of death. Like, who am I? Number one, I don't know. What good am I here on this earth? I don't know. And then the thought crossed that maybe my kids would be better off without me. And that, to me, looking back on it, was one of the hardest moments of my life. Because now, being who I am now, with where I'm at now, there's a part of me that wants to say, like, wow, how fucking selfish was I? And then there's the other part of me that says, wow, like, that dude was in a lot of pain. And I'm so grateful that I didn't actually pull the trigger when I had that gun in my hand. And I'm so grateful. And I remember her name, Roya, one of my old clients, in that moment called me and said, how are you? And we were talking about this before we went on, like, that one call to ask how somebody's doing can literally save their life. And I've experienced that firsthand. And she said, hey, and I said, like, I'm not good. Like, I'm not doing good. And if I were to tell you what I'm doing right now, chances are you might call the cops. So I can't tell you that. And she said, well, maybe this would be a good fit for you then. I go, what? She goes, yeah, there's this training this weekend. I think you should come. I said, what is it? She goes, oh, it's called Landmark. And I was like, what the fuck is Landmark? So of course it completely snapped me out, right? Complete pattern interrupt.
Yeah.
And I looked down, I was like, whoa, like I barely even recognized that. I was doing it. And I like got on Google, I started looking at it, and it said mastery and or it started saying like self-mastery, transformational training, and leadership. And I was like, leadership? I was a sergeant. Like, I'm a leader. I don't need that shit.
Right.
But then I started looking deeper into it, and I was like, all right, well, like, what else can I lose? What else can I lose, possibly?
Right. Yeah, it's only up from here.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I went in, and they're like, what stories do you tell yourself? And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And that was like a really defining moment. And that's when I really started getting into this work, my work now. Like, that was the initiation.
Wow. So you go through this landmark training, and it kind of sparks your next, well, your calling. Yeah, that's what I would say, is it sparks your calling. And now you notice that there's that recognition. And now let's get into your work, because this is some cool stuff. I remember when we were talking, you were talking about taking people to different places, doing ceremonial things like indigenous people have done for, however many years, and take those types of things and helping them. So tell us about your program and what you do for people, and what your passion is behind it.
Yeah, man. So, I mentioned this before, and something that I say that I do is I take people through their darkness to their dharma. Right? And their dharma is really their purpose here, their will to live, their change, their impact, their legacy that they want to leave. And doing that through the lens of healing, through awakening, through becoming the truth of who you are by recognizing who you are not, right? So it's like the stripping of layers, and we were talking about the spiritual process, right? Like everything's spiritual. And what I found, at least at this point, is spirituality is more about removing layers than adding them. So really taking people through experiences to strip the stories and the layers away by primarily working through the body.
Okay.
Right? So there's a Taoist philosophy that to really achieve enlightenment, right, the first is to master the body and all of its organs, then attain one pointedness of the mind, and then heaven will come down and dwell within you. So really that is more so, I would say, a parable for somatic work, which is really healing trauma through the lens of the body, through our senses, through the memories that are stored in the body. We were talking about the biology of belief, and how beliefs are stored in the body, not in the mind. Right? So if the belief lives in the body and the story lives in the mind, then we're able to actually create this holistic and integrative model to where we're not just doing mindset. We're not just giving you, the 7 keys to success or the miracle morning routine. It's getting to the root of why you're living your life the way you are. And really asking the question, is that really the life that you want to live? So bringing this healing work into what I would consider self-mastery through the realm of spiritual counseling is really what I define myself as a spiritual counselor, transformational alchemist, and being able to take people through experiences to really go into themselves on a deep, deep level. And we were talking before, right, into the darkness in a safe, effective, and meaningful way. And that actually is, at least to me, the way to truly love ourselves. It is a self-love journey. It is a journey of love, truth, and wisdom, awakening the wisdom within, and then living in truth and becoming part of the collective truth, right? The grand scheme of things, and really being able to create change and impact in life, whether it's relationships or health or business, and it's spread, right, or through all the pillars of life, not just this or this or that. It's this and that.
Wow. Yeah, I had a gentleman, my neighbor, Dr. James, he was on about a year ago. Well, he takes people, he does ketamine treatments. And he's got this really cool clinic in Scottsdale. So as you're telling me this, I'm like, he takes them through a journey. He walked me through that whole thing of what he does. And it's the same kind of thing, taking them into the darkness, but it's all in a certain environment. And he says, man, the things that people recognize about themselves that they're able to let go when they're going in this process and coming out of it, is insane. So, I mean,
Right.
drug addictions, all this kind of stuff. So it sounds like you are, you have another modality to be able to help people find why they really are not living the way they want to, because they're telling themselves this story based on a belief. And do you help them change the story to change the belief, or do you change the belief to change the story?
Right. So in my approach, so I use what's called the new intention method,
Okay.
which is basically a 9-pillar, 9-pronged approach. And really looking at the specific sequence and understanding what we know about trauma and what we know about the body and what we know about psychology now, it's, at least to me, most effective to start with demystifying spirituality, understanding energy and the influence of reality. And then from there, being able to work with the independent self, the beliefs that are stored in the body, which creates the space inside of the vessel to then start adopting new beliefs and then working through story. So of course we use this story every step of the way, right? The entire experience is the story. And to master and embody the story is completely different, because we can master our story just like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
We can understand our story just like we can understand our emotions. It does not mean we're the master of them, though. It does not mean that we have built a relationship to it, and then recognizing the influence and the impact that it has on our entire life. So really in this 9-pronged approach, which I've packaged more into like a 16-week group program, and of course I bring the modality into work with clients, whether that's in a long form mentorship or a full day immersion or a 3-day immersion. It just really depends on what someone is looking for, right? So there is an individualized approach, which I learned very early in fitness, that bodybuilding.com workouts don't work for everybody.
Yeah.
So why would this work?
You mean not always 8 to 12 reps, 4
Yeah.
sets of each exercise?
Yeah, it's like we're working with a very unique system, right? Everybody's body's different.
Yep.
Right? Nobody's, leg bone is the same size as somebody else's leg bone. We all have this individual path, right? Carl Jung says it's the process of individuation, to recognize that separation is required and necessary on a psyche level to then discover one's role within the collective, right? Within the collective role. And that's really the process of self-realization, self-actualization, self-mastery, whatever words people associate it to. And it's really the uncovering and discovering and recovering of one's true self, right? And really navigating that in a way that is safe and effective, right? Because there's a lot of things in the world right now where it's saying, achieve this in 90 days, right? We'll get you here in 30 days, 90 days, which are all sales tactics,
Right.
if we're being honest. And also recognizing that that time period is a great time to have information and awareness, but really the real work comes after it's completed, right? It's like the session starts when the ceremony ends.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, you're teaching them the skill during that time. Now they have to put the skill to work for the rest of their life, right?
Exactly. And having the tools and the capabilities and the resources and the frameworks on how to do it for themselves. Self-mastery. I'm going to give you something where you can master this and then confront this and face this with simplicity and effectiveness every step of the way. And if it doesn't work for you anymore, then put it away. Find something else that will. And promoting that, promoting the journey, promoting life as a ceremony, as a ritual, which is really, in the old ways, how we once viewed life.
Yeah.
Like we used to view life as a ceremony, and I've sat with a lot of indigenous cultures and different ceremonies, and I don't facilitate those ceremonies, right? But I bring the lessons that I learn in them to the work now.
I love that.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about some of your clients' success stories of things they've been able to either stop doing, start doing, lifestyle changes, and so the audience has an idea, because I guarantee there's hundreds, but just so that they have an idea, because I think you're going to get customers out of this. You should sign up for whatever he does, because it's amazing. But yeah, let's talk about some success stories.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll speak to to two people, actually, one in the realm of health and then one in the realm of relationships, because those are normally the two greatest areas.
Yeah.
And of course, people, we talked about this before too, see the wealth piece, right? But after the health and the relationship piece is done, right? Wealth always comes after, right? And people who acquire wealth to begin with normally recognize that they're lacking in health or relationships after the fact.
Yes.
Right? So I'll speak to the health and the relationships because that's really what I'm passionate about. And one of my clients, she just went through the 16-week cohort, both of them did. And she was able to overcome her marijuana dependency that she's had over 20 years.
Wow.
Because she had the awareness of why she was using it. And she recognized through the experiences that she would get like 1% more awareness after every single piece. So it didn't all come together at this like aha moment, which is very common in this work, but it wasn't overwhelming. She was able to create a sustainable way to achieve awareness. And then she then had that newfound awareness to then implement through action and proven frameworks. And she's been able to sustain that. And when that happened, she was able to repair the relationship with her partner because it was getting in the way.
Right.
Right.
She was probably using it for more than just one or two reasons. There was probably maybe 20. And she was like, oh, I use it for this because I'm easier in a social situation. I use it for this because it takes stress away. I use it for this. So through that journey, she was able to identify that and then replace it through a framework that you've helped her with.
Exactly. And I say a dependency over addiction because addiction can be classified as many things, but really when we become dependent on something outside of ourselves, we're now not our true self.
Right.
We're now not at our most holistic and integrated self. So being able to recognize that and then implement that and use it intentionally, right? It's not like she rips it out completely, which is most addiction recovery models. It's not a sobriety journey, it's a recovery journey, right? And it's a recovering of self. It's a recovering of vision. It's a recovering of life, right? And that was one example. And the second one was, you know, another woman who came through my program, because I work with men and women, right? Mostly women actually come into my programs because women are a little bit more open to this work than men, which, yeah, that's another conversation probably, or maybe a small snippet here. And she was able to have a conversation with her mom that she's never been able to have with her mom and her sister. And it's been a process for her to start rebuilding that relationship, right? To like reestablish that dynamic, that family trust, that love, that who knows that she hadn't had for so long, right? To be a child growing up in the world without the love of a parent takes its toll.
It does.
I've seen 60, 70-year-old men and women come forward and be like, wow, this is the first time I'm realizing that I didn't actually feel loved, and now I get to learn how to love myself. And that was her mission, was really being able to love herself to such a degree that she was able to have that challenging conversation. And now she's left her job. She's not doing what she doesn't want to do. She's actually starting her business. She's going into her coaching, which is something that she's been putting off for years because she found what's really important to her, right? So she's healing a family relationship. She's going out into the world to create her impact, to create her legacy, right? To help other people with what she struggled with, right? Which is why her darkness became her dharma, right? And it just naturally unfolded. It wasn't anything I suggested. It was through her own discovery that she was able to reclaim who she really is and what she loves to do and why she's here. And she made her own sovereign and autonomous decision to live her life the way she wants to.
Love that. Well, and two, it's like you talk about discovery. And one of the things, it was a book I read last year. It was the first time I'd ever read it. It's by Napoleon Hill called Outwitting the Devil. And in that book, he talks about thinking being the number one gift that we're given. Well, when you're going through this discovery process, you're using your brain, you're thinking, right? You're getting quiet. And these things that you're discovering, you have to use your own mind. You're not on social media, just mindlessly scrolling, letting somebody else do your thinking. That's what you're able to, in her case, get to that point where she discovered these things about herself. and she used her own mind. So I think people need to understand that if you really think through things and don't just take everything at face value, whether it's something you're doing or something that you're being sold, if you use your own mind, man, you can create some amazing things for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, there's enough science, right, to
Yeah.
suggest and prove right now how great of an impact your thoughts have on your emotions,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your thoughts inform the emotions and also label them as feelings. And how often are people's actions dictated by unhealthy thoughts, right? Or by emotions that they judge as positive or negative,
Mm-hmm.
instead of recognizing them just simply as thoughts and emotions,
Yeah.
right? And when we're able to become aware of that and then recognize that we are the power, we don't have power, we are power,
Mm-hmm.
then we have the ability and freedom to choose. That's what it means to be responsible, able to respond. And when we're able to respond versus react, magic happens.
Right.
We now have full command instead of control of our life. Control is seeking safety and validation from the outside in, where command is working from the inside out. So when we recognize that we have the ability to choose and we become responsible for our actions, oh wow, now we feel empowered, connected, and whole.
That's amazing. It's another clip. That was good. I feel like we could talk all day, but I know you got to get going here. And Daniel's probably got to get going. We started a little bit late today, but we need a round 2 of this, because I think I think we could do like a little panel, bring somebody else and talk, through some of your actual adventures you take people on. Maybe even one of your past guests, maybe Nick Rapolis. I know, didn't you guys just recently go on one with Nico?
We didn't go on one. I went on his podcast.
Oh, you went on his podcast. Okay.
Yeah, I went on his podcast.
Yeah, I just remember you guys knew each other at the Not Most People event. For some reason I thought he had gone on one of your trips recently, but.
No, I got some guys who'd probably be down for that.
Yeah, totally. Now this is great. Now, how can people get in touch with you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, pretty much every social platform. Just my name, Nathan Kohlerman. Twitter, Instagram, getting off of TikTok for obvious reasons, at Nathan Kohlerman, and then just my name on LinkedIn, Facebook, and then I'll be starting up the YouTube channel here pretty soon and a Rumble channel, and I'll be launching the Spiritual Psychopath podcast very shortly, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah, a quick plug on the podcast. So what's it going to entail?
It's going to explore the dichotomy of life. It's going to be an immersive experience, right, for people to really confront really challenging topics in today's world, and also hear from aspiring leaders in their struggles through their darkness, and how they were able to take their darkness and transmute it into their dharma and share those inspiring stories. And then also demystify a lot of what society says, right? So demystifying what spirituality is, and really acknowledging and honoring all of us is welcome, right? All parts of ourselves are welcome, and we're able to explore those in very effective and very clear and concise ways. So I'm still wrapping up some of the language around it, and I'm really excited because that's going to be where we have the Spiritual Psychopath Society, right? I was telling you about it before. We're going to have a community for the black sheep of the world, to be seen, to be safe, to be welcomed, where all of them is welcome, and a lot of cool stuff to go along with that, man.
Cool, man. I can't wait. I'm a subscriber as soon as it's up. Trust me. This is one of my favorite conversations I've had on this podcast, and this is episode 60. I think it'll be 69. But this is literally one of my favorite conversations. So I appreciate you today, and I can't wait to get to know you better.
Yeah, man. Me too. Thank you, bro. So cool, man.
Hey guys, I know you got a ton out of this. I can't wait to re-listen to this, and I don't always re-listen to my own podcasts, partly because I don't want to hear myself talk, but listening to Nathan again, I can't wait for it. Please share this out. I know it's going to impact you. It's going to impact whoever you share it with. Appreciate it, and we will see you next time.